Cool. Hey everyone, and welcome to our fifth webinar in the How to Succeed at IELTS series. Today's webinar is How to Achieve a Band 7 in IELTS Writing. Today we have IELTS expert Rocco online to chat to you about how you can do your absolute best on test day in the writing section. Without further ado, I'm happy to hand you over to Rocco. Rocco, welcome.
Thank you very much, Sam, and hello everyone. Thank you for joining us with our masterclass today. Also, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. Thank you. So we're going to target Band 7 in IELTS Writing, and actually, I feel that the advice today is also helpful for people targeting Band 8, Band 9. A lot of this applies to those upper bands as well. And just so you know, we're going to cover both the academic and the general training in IELTS writing. So we'll look at all aspects of that. So welcome. Basically, these are the three main aims for our masterclass. Look at some practical writing tips that you can use. Understanding the scoring, the rating criteria that the examiners use, and avoiding costly mistakes. Now, even though you might be aware of some of these that we mentioned, it's always a great reminder, to reinforce some of those things. This is very useful, understanding the scoring as well from an examiner's perspective, the kind of language that they would look for. So our focus is writing and academic or general training. The speaking and the listening components in IELTS are the same between academic and general. The difference is between the reading and writing papers. So we're going to look at that in a little bit more detail. Now, the scoring system, it is the same regardless of whether you're doing academic or general. It's the same criteria. There are four main areas. The first one is your task achievement, which is task 1, and your task response, which is task 2. They're quite similar criteria, but basically this is the area where you're marked according to how well you've developed your answer. In task 1, did you answer all the bullet points fully in the letter, in the general task 1 letter? In the academic, did you cover all the key features of the graph? Did you make comparisons and contrasts? Is your answer fully developed? Also in the letter, it also looks at things like tone as well. Did you use the appropriate tone in your letter? More about that later. 25% is on coherence and cohesion. So that's things like paragraphing. Now this is task 1 and task 2. Looks at the use of linking devices, like first of all, in conclusion, and referencing, using words like it, they, them, these, those, to stop repetition, former, latter. When it comes to the essay, do you have a clear topic sentence in your paragraphs? And in fact, are you using paragraphs? Remember, even the task 1 answers for both academic and general require paragraphs. Lexical resource, which basically means vocabulary. So it looks at your range of vocabulary. Do you repeat a lot of language? Be careful in the academic task 1, because I find that there are a lot of people maybe might repeat some of the words. They use increase 3-4 times instead of saying growth or rise, increment. So not just range, but also looks at whether you're using less common vocabulary. So especially at Band 7 and higher, you need to use words that are less common. So you could use the word get, very common, or you could use the word acquire, obtain, where it's much less common. Acquire, acquisition, the noun form, so things like that. Also looking at collocations as well. You could use a good word like preference, but do you have the right collocation to use that noun? What's the right verb? So it's have our preference. What's the right preposition? have a preference for. So collocations are important as well, being accurate in those. And the last one, of course, is grammar. Grammar accuracy, of course, is important, but even at band 7, band 8, you can make errors, but the difference for the upper bands is the amount that you make. And the type, they tend to be a lot more minor, and errors are much less common. They don't really affect the meaning coming through in your answer. But there's another aspect, grammar range. So don't repeat the same sentence types. Use a variety of sentence types. Active, passive, if sentences. Also, make sure that your sentences are complex. One of the pieces of advice that I hear people say is, oh, write in short sentences. If you do that, you won't make so many mistakes, which is true, but you need range and accuracy. So that means you need to have complex sentences. At band 7 and higher, if you don't have any complex sentences at all, you cannot get band 7 for your grammar. You need both, grammar range and accuracy. Okay, so guys, let's have a closer look at task 1, and we'll start with task 1 academic. And basically you're given some visuals and you have to put that into words. Now the visuals can be things like a line graph, bar graph, pie chart, a table of data, a process, or a map. And you'll see that these sometimes can be singular or multiple, 2 line graphs, 2 maps, or maybe even 3 pie charts or something like that, or a combination. You might get a pie chart with a line graph or something like that. And it's recommended that you write at least 150 words in about 20 minutes. Now with that, I think it's good to push a little bit beyond the 150. It is a minimum, so you can write more. There's no harm in writing more than 150, especially for the higher bands, because you might need more examples of band 7, band 8, band 9 language. It's possible to get that in 150 words, but it is harder. Push, go beyond 180, 200 words. Don't be afraid of that. So here's a sample question. This is a combination, bar graph and line graph. So they give you some input language here. And then there's the instructions. Summarize it. So you don't have to mention every little number in there, but the main features and make comparisons, include data. But just remember here, if you're given 4 lines in a line graph, mention all the 4 lines. Or in a pie chart, if there are 5 segments, mention all the segments. But the ones that are insignificant, just mention them briefly. The ones that are the main features, spend more time on those. So in academic task 1, always think about an introduction. Mention what, where, and when. That's a good rule, actually. What, where, and when. And that's a nice little introduction done for you. But of course, don't copy too much from the question. Try to paraphrase the question as much as you can. Use your own words. Highlight the key features with figures. That's your main body paragraphs. I think a couple of body paragraphs is fine in academic task 1. And importantly, an overview. Now, a good place to put it is at the very end. I do know some people like to put it at the end of the introduction over here. That's fine. As long as you have an overview, that's great. But what I recommend is don't have 2. I've seen it where people put an overview at the end of the introduction and then they have a conclusion as well. That's 2 overviews. For band 7, you need a clear overview. That word clear is in the descriptors. So if you've got 2 overviews in different places, is that a clear overview? So careful. In the introduction or in the conclusion, but not both. What, where, when? That's what I said. What, where, when? What is it? Yes, we know what it is. It's the number of Japanese who spent their holidays overseas. That's what. Where? Overseas and Australia. When? From 1985 to 1995. So that's all covered. As you can see, it's just one sentence to cover those three things. And it's also important to highlight the key features. Now, you don't have to mention every number. Mention the important figures. So there are a couple of figures here, 11 million, 15 million, as you can see. But it's also good to make comparisons and contrasts as well. In the first sentence, only. That's a good contrasting word. Second sentence, apart from. Fantastic. And let's look at the next body paragraph. Oh, there's a question to think about. The highest you can score. Let's say if you forget to include the data. So we'll go back a page. This person has included data. But if you write a beautiful answer and you don't have figures, you forget. What's the highest you can get for your task achievement? Is it band 5, band 6, band 7, or band 8? Have a think about that. We'll come back to that in a moment. Let's look at the second body paragraph. Fantastic. Lots of figures here. 2%, 4.5%. Now, for those of you who use European languages, take care of the punctuation. 4.5%, not 4,5. Be careful, we use different punctuation in our numbers. For example, to separate thousands, we use a comma. For decimals, we use a point. The writer has used brackets here, and that's okay if you want to use brackets because it can give you some variety in your sentences. However, just remember that using brackets simplifies your answer, simplifies your grammar. If you remove the brackets, it forces you to add more language, making your sentence more complex. Very important for band 7 and higher. And yes, so this you'll see also answers the question as well. Okay. So remember that question? If you forget to include data, the highest you can get for your task achievement score, which is 25% of your score in task 1, is band 5. Doesn't matter how wonderful your comparisons and contrasts are. If you forget data, there you go. It's the highest you get is 5. Now, let's have a look at the overview. And again, another question for you to think about. If you forget the overview, you don't have one, what happens? What's your highest band? Is it 5, 6, 7, or 8? Just have a think about that. I'll discuss this in a moment, but that's one thing to think just at the back of your mind. What happens if you don't include an overview? So here's an example of an overview, and it's very clearly marked. Overall, I can look at that word and know that it's an overview. So use a very good linking device like overall or in general, something that actually means it's a summary. Don't use according to the graph or according to what is shown. That's not as clear as something like this. And you'll see there's no data in the overview. A good overview should not have data in it. Otherwise, it'll look like another body paragraph. You just need one sentence. You just need to maybe pick out 2 or 3 things. And again, include language of comparison and contrast, despite. Trebling, which means gone up by 3 times. This is fun. This has got three aspects. And just remember that, let's say you've got a line graph with 5 lines in it. Don't mention every category, or a pie chart with 6 segments. Don't mention every segment and jam pack the overview with every segment. No need. Just mention 2 or 3 aspects. The insignificant ones you can leave out. Maybe you can mention the one that dominated, or the one that was, and actually quite often you'll find there's one thing that's a bit different, has a unique trend compared to the others. Maybe everything increased, but one aspect decreased. Let's get back to that question about the overview. What happens if you don't have it? The highest band is 5. So careful, it is so important to include it. Okay, so just to summarize, make sure you've written 150 words as a minimum. For those of you doing the computer delivered test, the great thing is there's a little counter at the bottom so you know how many words that you've done. Include an overview. Make sure you've selected the most important information. Make sure you've backed up your description with some data, figures, examples. You've made effective comparisons, linking words as well, like you would in an essay. However, in contrast. And you've used paragraphs. Now, when it comes to paragraphs, this applies to, I think, task 1 or task 2. And academic or general. Have a blank line, leave an empty line between your paragraphs so your ideas are clearly separated. If you've got time up your sleeve, check for grammar and spelling. So, common mistakes, you don't have data. You interpret the data, you try to explain why the trend went up or the trend went down. Oh, the reason why the trend went down, because if I'm not wrong, Japan went through an economic crisis at that stage. No, don't do that. It's probably because of COVID. No, don't do that. Don't give reasons for why the data has gone up or down, unless it's there, unless it's been mentioned. Don't describe every rise and every fall, just the main ones. And if you don't have an overview, of course. Processes are pretty straightforward. You just start from the beginning and you keep on going. Mention every step. And make sure you include sequence words like first, next, then, after that. And make sure you use some passive voice as well. Oh, and by the way, make sure that even if you do a map question or a process question, you must include an overview. A good overview for like a process, include the number of steps. Overall, there are 10 steps in this process. And have a close look. Sometimes one particular thing is mentioned more than once, or it appears in 2 forms. So that could be a good second aspect to add to your process question, a process overview. Okay, now general training writing. Let's look at task 1. This is the letter. Here's an example of a formal letter. Well, I know straight away it's formal, even without looking at the question. It says you should begin your letter with "Dear Sir or Madam." And they give you a bit of background information. So here's the background. There have been some problems with public transport in your area. So you have to write a letter to the public transport company. So don't write "Dear Manager." Instructions say you should write "Dear Sir or Madam," so do that. Then they give you 3 bullet points that you need to include, all of them in your answer. And look out for things like plurals, problems, describe the problems. If you mention only one problem, that's going to be an issue. That means that it's going to affect your task achievement. You need to mention at least 2. 2 is a good number. Don't mention too many, otherwise all your ideas are underdeveloped. Just mention 2. That way it makes sure that your ideas are more developed. Look out for words like "and," how it affects your family and your community. And, so that means you've got to mention both of those, you know. Here, even that they ask for changes, problems, multiple. Look out for that. Some good rules now for the task one in the general. Include the purpose of your letter at the beginning. If it's a formal letter, I am writing to express my concerns about, or something like that. Or letter to a friend, or dear Mary, I'm just touching base with you. There's something I want to ask you about. I want to borrow from you, or something like that. A bit of advice with that sentence that gives the purpose of your letter. Don't incorporate the first bullet point in it. So I wouldn't say something like, I'm writing to describe some problems I'm having with public transport in your area, or some problems with the late arrival of your transport. Don't mention that in your purpose. Just hold back a little bit. Keep the bullet points separate from that first sentence. So that means you've got to be a little bit broader, not too specific, and start with this one. The reason I say that is that you want to reach 150 words easily. So if you include the first bullet point in that, that's the first bullet point gone, and suddenly you've now got to start thinking of more ideas. So do that. The purpose of your letter, cover all the bullet points, all 3 of them, and do it fully. And maintain the appropriate tone. And tone is a tricky one in the letter, because what that means is something like, if this is a formal letter, right? If you're really casual, hey, I want to ask you something. That's not appropriate tone. I wish to inquire. That's much better tone. And again, if it's a letter to your friend and you're using really formal language, that's inappropriate. That's not the right tone how you would write to a friend. But there are other things to consider about tone as well. I do see this task as more of a cultural task. You really need to understand the culture of English-speaking countries. For example, if it's a letter of complaint, how people complain in one culture can be completely different in how they complain in other cultures. Some cultures are very direct. Some are very indirect when they complain. What's your culture like? Also, if it's a letter of apology, in some cultures, it's very important to apologize a large amount. But in some cultures, that's overdoing it. That would affect the tone. So just watch out for that. I've got another question for you to think about. If you don't cover all the bullet points in your letter, what happens to your task achievement score? Let's say you run out of time and you don't mention the 3rd bullet point. Or maybe you misunderstand one of the bullet points completely and you write about something else. What happens? What's the highest? 5? 4, 5, 6, or 7? What do you think? I'll come back to that in a minute. So look, here's an example of your purpose. I write to draw your attention to recent problems with public transport in Newtown. That's a very clear purpose. And you notice the writer here did not begin with the first bullet point, with specifically what the problems are. And you'll see here, with regards to the first bullet point, the writer has mentioned more than one. There are long delays. And in the next sentence, he talks about reduced frequency, long delays, reduced frequency, 2 problems. Okay, first bullet point has been covered. And you'll see here with the second bullet point, these effects, high level of public concern. It takes up 20 minutes. There's been a drastic downturn in retail trade. So there's a couple of effects. And the 3rd bullet point. May I suggest the buses be rerouted? There's one recommendation. And return to the old weekend bus timetable. Well, there's 2. So plural, problems, causes, solutions. It's been covered. Oh, back to this question. If you forget to include all 3 bullet points, guess what? It's a 4. That's the highest you can get. It's so important you cover those 3 bullet points. It's so important that you actually reread them to make sure you've understood them clearly. And when it comes to the academic task 1, if you don't mention all the parts of a pie chart, all the segments, all the lines, or if there are 3 pie charts and you mention 2, oh dear, then band 4 is the highest you can achieve. So that's quite important. Tone, here we go. It's a formal letter. Dear sir or madam, and they've ended it appropriately, yours faithfully. Don't end yours faithfully if it's a letter to a friend. It'd be like a best wishes or something like that. And you'll see here, full name, Simon Smith. If it's a letter to your friend, best wishes, Sally, just first name is fine. Look, lots of formal language here. I would also recommend, may I suggest, furthermore. So I wouldn't use furthermore in a letter to a friend. So this is appropriate tone. And if you don't maintain tone, 5. In band 5, if your tone is a little bit inappropriate, band 5 is the highest you can get for your task achievement. So watch out for that. Now, just to review, analyze the task, look for more than one element, which includes plurals, problems, and also includes the word and. How has it affected yourself and your neighborhood, or something like that? And there it shows you there are 2 aspects you have to answer. Plurals in the bullet points. Make sure you state the purpose of the letter very clearly. Also use paragraphs. Whatever you do, don't use headings and bullet points. I know people do that in emails in everyday life, but no bullet points, no headings. Same in academic task 1, same in task 2 for both tests. Oh, and make sure you've got a sentence to politely finish off, looking to the future. You know, like, I look forward to your response in this matter. Or if it's a letter to your friend, can't wait to catch up soon. Best wishes, Sally. So make sure you include that as well. Make sure you get the right style, formal, informal. Careful if it's a letter to a professor or your manager, you've got to have to be polite and formal, maybe more semi-formal. You still use something like dear, but use their surname, dear Mr. Smith, dear Ms. Brown, and then conclude with yours sincerely maybe, and still full name. Oh yeah, try to avoid copying too much from the input. Try and paraphrase as much as you can. Same with academic as well, academic task 1. Make sure you get the right start. If it's dear ... to your friend, you put your friend's name, dear George. No need to include addresses at the start and dates. End the letter in the right way. Yours faithfully for something formal. Kind regards for something less formal. Let's look at task 2. Now we've got some information here about task 2 for academic and general. This information applies to both. We're just going to watch a short video. Here are some ways to help you reach a band 7. So I'm still here, don't worry, I'm not going away. It's just a little 4 to 5 minute video. It's going to clearly show you some steps of how to reach a band 7 or higher, I would also say. So make sure you got your earphones in. Let's have a listen to this.
Hey IELTS test takers, we're here today to give you 7 steps to help you reach a band 7 on IELTS Writing Task 2. You're welcome to pause the video and read as we move through the essay example. Let's begin. Step 1. Answer all parts of the question.
Now this type of question here is discuss both of these views and give your own opinion.
First of all, you need to show the examiner that you have answered all parts of the question. How many parts are in this question? Yes, that's right, 3. View 1 and 2 and your own opinion. You must do 3 things to achieve a higher band. showing the examiner that you are addressing all parts of the task.
I think it's also good to separate these. You see in the second body paragraph, many people feel, because the question says, some people think, others believe. And I think the writer's done the right thing here. Many people feel. When I see that, I know it's not the writer's personal position on the matter. Look here in body 3, I strongly believe. Okay, that must be your view. That's their view.
Present one view, and then the other view, and then present your opinion. Step 2. Present a clear position. You must say what your position is on the prompt, so the examiner knows what you think about the question.
So regardless of if it's an agree or disagree question, or discuss both views or advantages versus disadvantages, in the intro, it's really important to put your position and also to review it again in the conclusion.
Step 3. Structure your essay. Essays need paragraphs to show the reader where to start, which ideas are important, and that your essay is concluding. Make it easy for the examiner by leaving a space between each paragraph. If you look at this essay, you will see the clear and logical structure with a clear idea developed within each paragraph. Step 4. Use linking devices. Your sentences and paragraphs need to be linked together using appropriate linkers and phrases that help to make your answer logical and clear. Look at this essay. You will see how the linking devices help make the essay sound logical to the reader.
Now you'll see here linking devices like however and in conclusion also. Remember, you don't have to begin every sentence with one of those type of connectors. That wouldn't be a good idea. That's overdoing it. You see here, the writers uses the word they for referencing. So make sure that you don't begin every sentence with one of these ones. Use them, but you can start a sentence with they or this or these, etc.
It is the glue needed to stick it all together. Step 5. Use a range of vocabulary. When you write, use words that you can spell and that you understand. It is better to choose words that are correct and clear rather than more complicated words that you don't really understand. The most important thing is to communicate clearly to the reader so they can follow your thoughts and ideas. Use words and phrases that go naturally together, or collocation. Use phrases that show you understand how to use the phrasal verbs and idiomatic language. Always check for spelling errors and typos. Step 6. Use a range of grammatical structures accurately. In order to reach a Band 7 for GRA, you need to have frequent error-free sentences, simple and complex sentences. Make sure you know the mistakes you usually make and practice those structures. For example, articles, subject-verb agreement, prepositions, and plurals. Practice writing complex sentences and remember to use punctuation. Step 7. Check your essay. Check the following by asking yourself these questions. Did I answer all parts? Did I use paragraphs? Did I use linkers? Is my spelling correct? And did I use a range of vocabulary? Did I use complex sentence structures? Did I use punctuation? Did I check my work? If you follow these 7 steps we've helped you with today, you'll be on your way to a Band 7 for IELTS Writing Task 2.
All right, thank you. So that's a good overview, and that's great, a great visual for you to see an essay laid out like that. Just to talk a little bit more on Task 2, we're going to have a look at some different question types. You can get an opinion question, discussion question, which is the one we just saw in the video, multi-part question. That means they give you 2 questions to answer. Quite often it's cause-effect solution, but sometimes it's multi-part where you have to explain a trend and give an opinion. A close look at the opinion essay. If you have a look here, to what extent do you agree or disagree? Be careful, don't treat this one like a discussion. I've seen some people do body 1 is agree, body 2 is disagree, and then they have a conclusion. That's confusing. You only do that if you've got a reason to connect the 2. This talks about shopping has become more popular as a leisure activity. If you partly agree and you've got 2 body paragraphs on opposite sides, make sure they've got a related or connected condition. It depends on what? So I partly agree because it depends on the age of the person. I can't say I agree or disagree. It depends on the age. So body 1, you talk about young people. And body 2, you can talk about old people. Maybe young people, you disagree. But for old people, you agree. Do you see? There's a relationship between the 2 paragraphs, rather than one paragraph is about one topic and you disagree for a completely different reason. That's confusing. The other way to do this is just to have both body paragraphs support your position. If you agree, have a couple of body paragraphs to support your view. If you disagree, have 2 body paragraphs to support your view rather than 1 and 1. It's okay to mention the other side. You might want to have a concession, but put that at the top of your paragraph and then argue against it. So concession, small amount, your argument, a larger amount compared to the concession. And then there's discussion essay, which we looked at in the video. Remember, there are 3 things to do here. Discuss both of these views and your opinion. Separate those 3 things in 3 separate paragraphs. In one paragraph, talk about why some people believe this. Body 2, why other people believe that. And body 3, which one you support. Try not to be 50-50. Try to choose a topic. That way, choose a side, so to make sure that your opinion is a lot more directed. Multi-part questions, these are great because there are 2 questions to answer. So body 1 can be the first question and body 2 can be the second question. But remember what we were talking about in the letter, if there are plurals, problems. So here, individuals and society. So you have to talk about both of them. You have to talk about the effects on individual people and then talk about how society as a whole is affected. And sometimes you're given a multi-part where you have to explain something and then you're given an opinion. What's your view? Which one do you support? Is it a positive or a negative development? So body 1 is the first question. Body 2 is the second question. Benefits, problems, plural. So make sure that you mention more than one. So some general advice. Think about how much time you allocate. Task 2, they recommend 40 minutes. There is a reason for that. It's because task 2 is worth double the points. It's double the marks compared to task 1. So they suggest double the time. Now it's up to you. You can actually begin with task 2. I know some people do that because they're worried about, well, if I rush because I'm running out of time, I'd rather rush task 1 because it's worth less. Other people, they like to begin with task 1. They get warmed up. So then when they come to do task 2, they're a lot more ready. Up to you. You could try both ways when you do your practice. Decide on your position. Express your view clearly. Give examples and evidence to support. Now, in a paragraph, if if you're giving an example, make sure the example does not dominate your paragraph. Your argument should dominate. Make sure your example is just to support, not to dominate the paragraph. So it's probably better to use it more towards the second half of the paragraph. And when it comes to examples, it's interesting. You can use a personal example, something you've seen, experienced. But I would recommend trying to write it in a non-personal way. When I was a university student, or I am a university student, and it's difficult for me. Rather than doing that, why don't you consider writing it in a non-personal way? Use your personal experience. For example, for university students, it is quite challenging. Remove the personal pronouns, because not that you lose marks for using a personal example, but if the example, you change it and write it in a non-personal way, you're more likely to use a wider range of language. Maybe more complex grammar because you're using passive voice to remove the personal pronoun. And be very careful about using invented statistics. I see some people create their own research statistics according to a report by the New York Times, 44% of, etc., and they create this invented example. Don't do that. It's better to make examples more observational rather than something that we know that you've invented. Make sure you've got paragraphs with a clear focus. So separate, have a blank line between them all. And don't use headings, don't use bullet points, whatever you do. Otherwise, you will definitely lose marks. But a clear focus, and make sure you've got a topic sentence. Keyword there is topic. So I've seen some paragraphs where they're looking at their opinion, and people say, first of all, furthermore, what is more, and 3 completely separate arguments to support their position in the one paragraph. But if you keep changing topics, that's not a clear topic sentence. So if the question for argument's sake is, should public transport be free? You can agree. For one of the reasons, you can say it's to do with it's good for health. Make sure the whole paragraph, if your topic sentence is, the key benefit is it will improve the health of the citizens. Make sure your whole paragraph is about health. Don't jump to another reason. It can save money. Don't put saving money and good for your health in the one paragraph. They're separate ideas. So make sure you've got a clear focus. Range of vocabulary and grammar structures, of course. Make sure complex sentences dominate your answer. Even like at band 6 level, band 6 writers will use a mix of simple and complex, but for band 7 and higher, the complex sentences dominate. Be very careful. If you do use a short sentence, use very, very few of them. Analyze the task. You'll be surprised how many people lose marks because they haven't analyzed the task clearly. My advice is read the question thoroughly, make a plan, but rather than just starting to write and never looking at the question again, keep looking at it every time. So read the question, make a plan, read the question again, and then do the introduction. Read the question for a 3rd time and do body 1. Read the question again for the 4th time, do the next body paragraph. Read the question again, do the next body paragraph. Read the question again, do the conclusion. Read the question again. So it might seem like you're overdoing it, but the number of times I've seen people go off topic, it's a lot, and they lose marks and people don't understand why. It's important that you understand the topic. I'll give you an example where a question could be about, there's a lot of technology in education nowadays. Both teachers and students use technology in their teaching and learning. How does it make the relationship between teachers and students weaker or stronger? And what you'll find with a question like that, some people will talk about why technology is good for teaching and learning. And they don't talk about the relationship. The question is about relationship. Does it make the relationship weaker or stronger? Do you see how it's very easy to go off topic? So if you don't talk about if the relationship is weaker or stronger, then you would definitely lose marks. So that happens a lot more often than people know. So check that a lot. A variety of linking words. Remember, don't start every sentence with in addition, furthermore, as a result, for example, in conclusion. They're good, but mix them up with things like beginning a sentence with this, those, and more referencing words like that. Of course, don't use headings or bullet points or numbered lists in task 1 or task 2, actually. And if you've got time handy, go back and reread. Check for spelling, check for grammar. Now, so general advice first, use your English every day. I know it's hard when people are working and studying, we've got many commitments, family and so forth. If you could just do a little bit every day, I think that consistency is important rather than saying, oh, look, today's my day off. I will do all my study on today. Even if it's just 5 or 10 minutes, try and do a little bit every day. Set targets. If you've got a big target like band 7, band 8, that kind of thing, band 9, that's nice, but that's a big target. It's very easy to lose motivation and steam. So I recommend setting shorter targets and smaller targets so you feel like you're achieving something. Every day, I'm going to review five words. Review 5 words every day, just 5. That's achievable, isn't it? Make sure you choose academic or general training. Be very careful with that one. Just check with your institution. Some institutions accept academic only. Some will accept general only. Some will accept both, whether it's for studies, for professional registration, or even for migration. Understand the scoring system. Look at those 4 criteria. Now, doing IELTS preparation courses, they're great, but you need to balance it with something. Don't just do IELTS preparation only. You need to balance it. Watch a movie in English, or listen to the news, or keep your own diary. If you love cricket, read about cricket in English. Why not? Here are a few links for you to look at. We're on YouTube. There's IELTS.idp.com, some news and articles to help you there. Also on Facebook as well, IELTS Essentials, that's us. There's another one coming up soon, another masterclass on common IELTS mistakes and myths. Look, that's a good one actually, because there are so many opinions about IELTS out there, and a lot of it's really, some of it's useful advice out there in the internet and books, and some of it is maybe not good advice. It's best to hear it directly from one of the IELTS partners, which is IDP. That way you can trust it. Okay, now, hey, we do have a bit of time to answer some questions. So if you've got any questions, please type away. You can type your questions, and I'm very happy to answer them. Sam?
Yeah, first of all, spectacular presentation, Rocco. I think you covered IELTS writing pretty significantly. And I hope that everyone watching today found that information particularly helpful for their test day. Now, we've had a few really interesting questions come in, Rocco. You're ready to answer them? You're ready for us to kick off?
Let's go, Sam.
Perfect. Question 1, can handwriting affect my IELTS band score in writing? Good
question, and yes, it can. It can affect your coherence and cohesion score. If it's, some people have their own unique styles, and that's okay to have your own unique style. because after reading for a little while, oh, I see, that's how you write your R or your T. That's fine. But if you've got very messy handwriting and it's the examiner has to strain to understand what the word is, then it can affect your coherence and cohesion score, yes.
Excellent answer. I think that covered it perfectly. Question 2, how often should we use common sayings, proverbs, or idioms during IELTS writing?
Careful, because they're not your own words, are they? So, and one of the dangers of using them is that people throw them into any essay. So if you do use it, maybe more towards at the end of the conclusion, perhaps, when you want to end off with a final idea or suggestion or something like that, it could fit there if it fits and if it's appropriate. I've seen a lot of them when they're not appropriate. So just careful with that one.
Good advice. Question 3, do we need to showcase a variety of sentence structures during IELTS writing task 1?
Yes, because the danger I find in the academic task 1, your answer can sound a bit robotic, a bit mechanical. Then the danger there can drop to a band 5. So try to use a variety of sentence types. So one thing I recommend, maybe you've got a line graph with 4 lines, and in one paragraph you want to compare 2 of the lines. Maybe begin with how they're similar. Both of them had a sharp rise in the first 5 years, and then in the second part of the paragraph talk about how they're different. However, line A rose much more sharply, reaching a peak here, whereas line B kind of plateaued a little bit. So yeah, doing things like that, how you actually group your things together can also determine if you're describing how things are similar, that's one type of language. Then if you're describing how they're different, that's another type of language, isn't it? So I recommend grouping things that are similar together rather than grouping things that are opposite together. Yeah, so try to use a variety of sentence types as well.
Great advice. Thank you, Rocco. Question 4, this is a good one, I think. In the overview, do we need to summarize all categories? For example, if there are 6 countries on the chart, should all 6 countries be mentioned during the overview?
Thank you for asking that question, because it's an important one. No, do not mention all 6 countries. Then your overview does not become clear, it becomes crowded. From those 6 countries, maybe mention a couple of them, the ones that stand out, maybe the one that dominated or the one that had an unusual trend. Don't mention all of them.
Perfect.
But I must say though, Sam, one more thing. Mention all of them in the body paragraphs by all means, but when it comes to just the overview, don't mention all of them again. That was your body paragraph was that. Pick maybe 2 of them, 2 or 3 maybe, or even you might find one of them is unique in 2 ways, perhaps.
Yeah, perfect answer. I think that was important information, and you conveyed that really well. Question 5, I've never seen this question before. Can we use brackets during the IELTS writing? For example, if I wrote the word charity and then in brackets, non-profit organization, close bracket.
When you say can I, there's no rule or law saying that you are not permitted to do so. But maybe if the question is, should I? So let's look at it from that way. Should I use brackets? My viewpoint on that is you don't lose marks, but remember this. If you don't use brackets, then you're forced to use more words, which will make your sentence more complex. The only time to think about that is sometimes in the academic task 1, some of the categories that are done in brackets. So, but if I were you, don't use them and make your sentences that little bit more complex.
I think that's a good answer. I think I would avoid brackets if I could, but I think, yeah, perfect answer. Question 6, another one I've never seen before, so unique question. Can I draw figures while writing during my essays, perhaps to illustrate a point?
No. So you're marked on the 4 criteria. It's grammar, range and accuracy, lexical resources, vocabulary, coherence and cohesion. So if it's something like that, no, treat it like an essay. I know, like for university, you would include that kind of thing, but in IELTS, no, I don't do that.
Cool. Good advice. Question 7. How many spelling mistakes would be acceptable to still score a band 7 or band 7? That's it.
It's not measured. We don't count the number of mistakes, but it's determined whether you've got some errors are okay. But it depends on how many you write. Say, some people write a 250-word essay. Some people write a 350-word essay. You are allowed some errors. And that's the definition that we use.
Perfect. That actually leads well into our next question. If I write 300 words or more for writing task 2, will it hurt my score?
Excuse me, Sam, sorry.
Oh, you're welcome. Please take your time. Have some water.
Oh, sorry about that, guys. Just lost my voice there for a second. Sorry, Sam, can I have the question again one more time?
Yeah, it came in well from the last one. If I write 300 words or more during writing task 2, will it hurt my score?
It depends. Are you on topic? If you're on topic, no problem. You're not penalized. You can write 400 words, but you have to be on topic. I've seen answers of 350 words that were on topic, fine. Some answers, 350 words, and a lot of it was not on topic or not relevant or a bit repetitive. So don't think more is better. More is good if it's relevant, if it's on topic, and if it's appropriate.
It's really good advice. I studied journalism and they were like, use as few words as you can to convey your point. So I studied that my whole life.
But Sam, at least 250 words for task 2, of course.
Exactly. That's exactly. Question 9. Are there any tricks for counting my words so I know when I'm close to 250 or 150?
Now, if you're doing the computer delivered test, there's a counter for you. That's fine. But if you're doing the paper-based test, what I recommend is when you do your practice before exam day, practice on the official answer sheets. You can download them off the internet. Task 1, task 2 answer sheets. So if you've done 10 practice task 2s and 10 practice task 1s, you kind of generally know whereabouts on the paper you normally reach 150 words. So let's say, with task 1, I normally reach 150 words on the second page on the back, about 6 lines down. That's my normal 150. So you know in the real exam, if you go past that point, you've made it. Or in task 2, if you write, I use the second page, 4 lines from the bottom, I normally get to 250 in my normal practice. Then in the real test, you know, if you reach the bottom of the page, you've made it. You should have made it. So practice on the actual answer sheets. Just download it off the internet.
I like that. That's a really clever way to do it. So thank you for that, Rocco. Last question for the night. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. Are task 1 and task 2 added up to make one overall writing band score? It's a pretty easy one, I think.
Yes, it is. But task 2 is worth double the points. So make sure you answer both questions because you can still lose marks. So the points from task 1 and double the points from task 2 together equals your band score.
Perfect. Thank you so much. That is all the questions we have time for tonight. Thank you so much for joining us, Rocco, and thank you to everyone who tuned in tonight to watch the webinar with us. We hope you've had something really helpful come out of this. We hope you've enjoyed. We'll be back next fortnight, as Rocco said, with the common mistakes to avoid in your IELTS test webinar. We're looking forward to seeing you then. Have a wonderful evening or day or morning, everyone who's watching. We'll catch you guys next time.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Goodbye. Take care and good luck.